We've got the all-new Acura TLX, and we're looking at the A-spec trim today.
There is certainly a lot of excitement and intrigue about this car. We're going to find out if it lives up to the hype.
Let's get in and take it for a drive. What do we have to put it in?
We have to put it in S for subscribe, and make sure you hit the notification bell to get updates on when new videos drop. And Andrea, what's your Instagram?
It is motormouth_Andrea.
Looking good, Drea. And mine is motormouth_Auto. I was going to say Acura.
No, Auto.
This video is brought to you by Car Cost Canada. Get the dealer's cost, list of rebates, plus discounted interest rates. Use the promo code MOTORMOUTH to become an expert member and get extra searches. The link is in the description below. So Andrea, I have a question for you.
Yes.
When you think of Acura, do you think of it as a premium brand or a performance brand?
I think of it as more a premium brand.
Well, you know, when Acura started out, it actually started out as a performance brand. And I can see them shifting back to their sort of original roots with the new models that they're coming out with.
Sure, I can see that. So about 6 years ago, Acura combined the TSX, the smaller car, with the TL, the larger, to form the TLX, which hasn't been that successful.
The TSX was a fantastic car. It was the European Honda Accord, the smaller Honda Accord, and they sold it here as an Acura. And the TL was a bulletproof car. Styling, not that strong.
Right.
But it was a really good, competent, especially with the super handling all-wheel drive models.
Sure.
So they stuck them together and they came up with a mediocre car.
I know, and it hasn't done that well. People are not impressed with it.
You know what it really came down to? When they brought the car out, it felt cheap compared to the old TL. The 8-speed dual clutch was not good, and the 9-speed they had with the 6-cylinder. When I initially drove it years ago, I thought it was a bit of a hot mess.
Right.
It got better as the years went along. I drove them a couple of times.
Tweaked it here and there.
They tweaked it, but this, in my opinion, is a massive jump forward. In fact, the new base model with this car, the one we're driving here now, has 66 more horsepower than the old base model engine and has 100 pound-feet more torque because they added turbocharging.
Yeah. So we've got a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, 272 horsepower and 280 pound-foot of torque. And you can really feel it in this car.
Remembering that old TLX with this either the 8-speed or 9-speed, the transmission really was the weak point.
Right.
And now it's totally out of the way. You don't notice it. They've done a good job with that.
So I've got a question for you about the suspension. This has a double wishbone front suspension, and I'm curious, do a lot of manufacturers use this type of suspension for their performance vehicles?
Yes, it's a higher end setup. It keeps the wheels flatter, especially when cornering. It's a more stable setup. But here's why I'm saying that Acura is going back to their roots. This is what they used to use in a lot of the cars, and even on the Honda side, they had double wishbone front suspension for the Accord. They went to a less precise and cheaper rack and pinion steering. Now they've brought it back. And here's the thing, Andrea. This car, in my opinion, is a direct answer to a Korean brand called Genesis. They brought out the G70. It won North American Car of the Year. It was heralded by people like us who test drive cars, saying that what a wonderful car. So they've basically gone back to the old formula of a performance-minded premium car.
Sure, sure. You can feel that.
Yeah, and you have different settings. There's a huge knob here. We're going to get to the design in a moment. You get the biggest knob, not just me. The biggest knob is the one you use the least. It's the dynamic settings. It doesn't change the suspension on this car. It only on the very top trim, what's it called?
On the top trim is the Platinum Elite.
Yeah, on the top trim you get the adaptive suspension.
Yeah.
That knob changes the shifting, the engine, all of those the weight of the steering and the super handling all-wheel drive system. But it does make the car livelier, and also it lets in a little bit more sound into the car. So that's something that I really like. And by the way, all of the cars in Canada are sold with super handling all-wheel drive.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It makes it really exciting and entertaining to drive, that's for sure.
And the transmission, I'll go down even one more gear. That's third gear. And now the shifts are They're pretty quick. They're maybe not as quick as a dual clutch, but for the average bear driving this car, it's going to be plenty fun.
Yeah, they'll be happy. And if they don't like this,
They get the Type S.
That's right.
They're coming with that engine, which is 355 horsepower
I know.
from a 3-liter V6. Now here's the thing about that. The internet does not like that number.
Why?
Because the Genesis, the G70, with their engine has 365 horsepower. So a lot of people are saying, well, it's got to have more than the Genesis. But it all comes down to the way it drives. I mean, if the torque delivery is good, if the transmission is good, and the all-wheel drive system set up properly, numbers are just numbers.
Yeah, well, that's what you always say. And it's going to have 354 pound-foot of torque. And the combination between the two might be the sweet spot. So, Hun, what is super handling all-wheel drive?
Well, it's marketing mumbo jumbo, first of all. But the reality is Acura places the all-wheel drive system as part of their handling package. Okay, so they proportion torque around the car from the front axle to the rear axle, from the left side to the right side, to not only give you traction for slippery conditions, we're in Canada, that's important, but also helps kind of push the car through the corners. So this car, when we're driving now, 70% of the power is going to the rear wheels, which is more of the European sort of design. Like BMW does the similar kind of thing. So that's more European driving dynamics. And also it can shift the torque 100% to one of the wheels at the back. So it gives you stability and it gives you traction, and they claim better handling.
So let's talk a little bit about fuel economy. In the city, it gets 11.2 liters per 100 kilometers, highway 8.0.
And the US miles per gallon are below that.
Yes, so it's okay.
Well, that's why they go to these smaller engines and turbocharge them, because in the testing, they get superior fuel economy. In real world, it's not always the case.
No.
Because turbocharged engines are more fun to drive, therefore you use more fuel often.
It's time for a price pause.
We paused the video so you can look at all of the numbers. These are Canadian and US numbers. So what are the most important ones? Where does it start?
So the base model comes in just under 44,000. The Tech, which we like, which has really good value, is just over 46, and the A-spec, which we are test driving, is just over 49.
What's the most expensive one?
So the most expensive is the Platinum at 51,690.
Unpause. Time for coffee.
Time now for questions, coffee, and cars.
Your questions from Instagram.
Would you guys rather have the TLX or the Accord 2.0 Touring? What do you think?
Good question. I used to always say, drive right past the Acura dealer and get the Touring Accord. Now, this vehicle is much better in every way. This is the one to get.
What trim level would you recommend on this TLX so that I get the best bang for my buck? Great question. I would say the Tech trim, which is one up from the base model. You get front and rear parking sensors, wireless charging, and you also get the heated steering wheel, which we think is pretty important.
Yeah, I think that's the one to get too.
Does the big size of the TLX mid-size dimensions disappoint you when the interior compact car dimension is quite small?
They put a lot of the extra size to the exterior design. You're right, the inside isn't much bigger or any bigger than the competition, but they're not charging more. No. So I'm okay with that.
Okay, good. Great looking car, but the sedan seems to be dying a slow death. It seems to be going in that direction, but we've got to give Acura credit. They have produced a fabulous looking car and much better than the previous model. So hopefully they're going to sell a ton of them.
They're throwing everything at sedans nowadays to get people to buy them. So there you go. There's questions, coffee, and cars. If you want to get a question, follow Andrea at motormouth_Andrea, and we do it every week. Nice. You know what? This thing has the most power other than one car. What is it?
Yeah, the Giulia, the Alfa Romeo.
But it's pretty close. This is 272 horsepower, and that car has 280. Most of the German competition are right down around the 250 mark.
That's right.
So I think Acura has done a good job. They're offering more power, but charging roughly the same as everybody else.
Yes.
What do you want to talk about?
So I want to talk about the exterior, because I think the exterior is the best part about this car. It's longer, wider, lower. It looks so sharp. I love the dual style LED headlights. I think the back looks really good with this A-spec trim, you get the black spoiler. So if you kind of like it to look a little bit sportier, you're gonna have to go with the A-spec.
But as we mentioned, A-spec does not get you the adaptive suspension. I think that's a miss. And they've done that on all of their A-spec cars. It's really an appearance package, nothing really mechanically different. I wish they could offer like the adaptive suspension with the A-spec, but they're not doing that. And kudos to Acura, like they're fighting back. The RDX is selling well. This car's out. They have a new MDX that has a very sleek and stylish exterior.
Yeah.
And there's more and more of them to come with Type S as well.
And Acura says, hey, if you don't like the space in this TLX, get an RDX or an MDX. We'll sell you those.
Yeah. So what about the inside of this? Because this is where I think we're going to have a little bit of trouble.
The moonroof comes with every trim, and I think that's great. But I think on the higher trim levels, I think that they should have had a panoramic sunroof. I think they're missing that.
I don't think so, because you know me, I usually have it like that. Keep it shut. On a bright day like this, it's dark inside, sunny outside.
Yes, we know how you feel about that. We know. So let's just first say the interior is much better than the old model, okay?
Really
much
nice
better.
materials.
Yes.
The dash pad is beautifully done. It looks really well put together, so that's good.
And can I mention one thing about this A-spec trim?
Sure.
It comes with the red stitching and the red accents, you know, with the gauge here. I think it looks just beautiful.
And it also comes with the leather and Alcantara inserts on the inside, which I kind of like. The base models come with faux leather, and I'm okay with that too, because they end up looking good years down the road.
They do.
Okay, now let's get to the knob. I'm trying to talk about the big knob in the center here. This is kind of polarizing. What do you think of that?
I don't love it. You know how I feel about a shifter and buttons. I like a traditional shifter, especially in a performance car. I'm not a big fan of this. I think this setup is good, but I don't like all that. I don't like this big button here.
The big knob.
No.
So they've moved that up, and that allows room for this trackpad. Now, there's another polarizing thing. Is this better or worse than other infotainment interfaces?
It's a little glitchy and it's super sensitive. I have to tell you, when I was trying to change radio stations, it went to a whole other area for me. It just drove me a little bit crazy.
I don't like it. I don't. You know, car companies are always trying to put new stuff in cars. This isn't better, and it's not touch sensitive. You can't touch the screen.
Nope.
You've got to use this trackpad, and you're right, it's glitchy. You have to learn how much weight and pressure to put on the trackpad, and you would get better with it with time.
For sure.
But there you go. The good news is there's a volume knob.
Volume knob.
Yeah, what a small thing, but it makes such a big difference. Okay, the good news is you talked about every trim gets a moonroof or a sunroof, and every trim gets this, right?
Yeah, a 10.25 infotainment screen, which I think is fabulous. I think it looks beautiful.
And if you get the base model, you don't get integrated navigation, which is totally fine, because it all is available with Android and Apple, so you don't need onboard navigation any longer.
No.
So I could care less about that. But if you go one up from the base, it is integrated. I always find, it sort of sounds contradictory, that you can feel a lot about a car within the first couple of minutes you drive it. Like you get in it and you get this feeling, do I like it? Do I like the way it drives? Do I like the interface and the inside of the car? And I have to tell you, I called you when I picked this car up and I said, I really like this.
You did.
I'd only driven it for a few minutes and I'm like, I think they've done a really good job. And throughout the week we've been driving it, and now I'm here to say they have done a really good job.
They have. There's been a few complaints about the turning radius, and I checked that out, and it is true. It isn't as bad as the Cadillac CT4V and CT5V, but it doesn't turn as well as I thought it would.
I could live with that.
I think Acura has done a really good job with this. The bright spot about this new TLX to me is the exterior.
If you go through every measurable category, power, design, interior, all of those things, they have improved this TLX in every single way. Now, the good news is there's still a Type S to come, and we can't wait to drive that.
This video is brought to you by Car Cost Canada. Get the dealer's cost, list of rebates, plus discounted interest rates. Use the promo code MOTORMOUTH to become an expert member and get extra searches. The link is in the description below.